Hi. So my talk for today, that was great. That was great. My talk for today, that was great, guys. Really like that a lot. Woo. My talk for today is called Go Your Own Way. Some of you may recognize I grabbed that from the title of a Fleetwood Mac song. The idea being that every one of us is a powerful, creative, spiritual being, unique in what it is we have to bring. Unique. It doesn't matter that others are doing the same thing, like I'm a musician, they're a musician. Each of us is unique. And so what we bring is unique, and yet sometimes what we have to bring hits into what others may call not realistic. Whether it's our own thoughts or it's our friends or our family, sometimes it's, I'm too old for that. I'm too young for that. I don't got enough, haven't got enough education for that, or whatever, and we get thrown off what it is that we have come here to do. So I'm going to let you know a little about my journey in life today. When I was 14, I was really into rock and roll, man. And so my mom got me a guitar and I started playing, and I was practicing for about 6 months. And my dad and my grandparents wanted to hear about my progress, so I played them some songs, and afterwards they said, you know, we really love you, but you have no talent at this. You really need to try something else because this is not for you. And at 14, I listened and didn't play for a couple of years. But after a couple of years, that urging, maybe you've had that urging inside you that keeps bringing you back to this thing that is yours to do, and you get stuck thinking, but can I do this? And how do you make a living at this? And how is all this going to work? But it kept bugging me, and so I started playing again, and I practiced for about a year, really, until I went out to my first open mic and got booed off the stage by 3 drunks at the bar telling me how terrible I was. And so I went home, and this time I was crying. I was really upset by this because I loved this. I loved the music. It just spoke to me so deeply, and yet everybody kept telling me I wasn't any good at this. But, being a headstrong guy, I kept at it, practiced another year, really went at it for another year, went out, played another open mic, where this time there was an agent in the audience who took the time to come backstage and tell me, you really have no talent at this. But you're cute, so why don't you try acting? Well, I didn't really know what to do at this point except just keep following my bliss, follow my heart. My parents are now starting to get to the point of, you need to go to college, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I just wanted to play music. And everybody just kept telling me, you can't, you're no good at this. But I kept at it, and I kept practicing, and I kept practicing. Put a band together, then put another band together, wrote some songs, started doing all that. And 7 years later, I'm reading in a New York City newspaper a review of one of my shows. And it starts out with, what a natural Cliff must be to have played the show he did last night. I went from no talent at all to a natural in 9 years. And that's the thing about it, right? We have sometimes what it is that's drawing us, because I want you to know this really clearly, that if it's drawing you, you have what it takes. It may not look like it. It may not show itself at all, but if it's calling you at all, and you think you're too old, you're too young, you're too this, that's that, or the other thing, I want you to know that in the end, you have everything it takes to succeed at that. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, you've put your nose to the grindstone and you worked really hard and you pulled that off. What does it have to do with spirituality? And you'd be right. There's this thing called the four kingdoms. The first is to me. This is where you feel like a victim of life. Everything is just coming at you and you just don't feel like you have any say over it. Maybe you've experienced that in your life. I know I have, where some things happen and it's like, well, I didn't ask for that. I didn't want that. The next is by me, where you put your head to the grindstone and you push your way through and you make it happen. And that's what I did with music. I was very much in a by me place. The next is through me, where you start realizing there's something larger than yourself and you open to it and you allow it to flow through you. And you start feeling like you're not alone in this. You start feeling like there's something larger coming along with you for the ride, guiding you and supporting you. And then the last one is as me, where you realize it's not something out there going through you, but it's you. It's your higher self speaking to you as you, guiding you and giving you messages all the time and saying, hey, there's another way to go about this. But when I was doing all that music stuff, I didn't know about that. I hadn't found this teaching. I was just pushing and pushing and pushing. And so after a decade of all that pushing, where finally I'm getting these reviews where people are saying, this guy's really something, I was exhausted. I mean, and I don't know about you, but when I'm exhausted, I get grumpy, right? And so I started being grumpy at times when it was a really bad idea, dealing with people in the music business. And I started running into the to me and by me thing, just bouncing off each other. I'd written this song that was picked for being on the Olympics album back in the 80s. And then the album came out and my song wasn't on it. And I didn't, and along with Bruce Springsteen, I mean, this was a big deal to have this song go for the glory, make it onto this record, and then the record comes out and my song's not on it. And I found out, and I'm walking down the street months later, and the lady who was on the committee that picked my song just happened to be walking the other way. And I asked her what happened, why didn't my song make it? And she said my agent never called to give them permission on the publishing. Talk about it to me, you know? And there were all these other circumstances that happened. That Talking Heads management company said, we want to sign you, but not your band. They wanted me to drop the people who had actually gotten me to put the band together in the first place. Two of them were my best friends. And I could look at all that and I could go, oh my God, all these things happened to me. Now I know better, but I didn't then. And so I got so grumpy at the wrong time that one day I woke up with a myriad of messages on my machine, my voice machine, canceling every single gig I had coming up in New York City and elsewhere. Canceled all of them. And I put down the guitar and I didn't play for 10 years. I didn't touch that guitar for a decade. After all that work. You know why? Because I hadn't known how to let this power that we talk about here into my life. I'd pushed so hard and felt so devastated by the whole thing and had no clue that there was a whole nother way of being with this. And so that decade passes. I'm now in another marriage. I have a son, and I'm living in Asheville, North Carolina. And my wife at the time, my ex-wife, she's the mother of my son. She got really sick of living with somebody who was grumpy all the time. So she left me. And the one thing she did when she left was leave me this card with the name Dr. John Waterhouse on it, who used to be president of our movement, but before that and after that was the senior minister along with his wife, Dr. Barbara Waterhouse, at the Center for Spiritual Living in Asheville, North Carolina. So I went and saw John because I was pretty devastated and, dark and gloomy, really dark space. And he goes, wow, you must be the darkest person I've ever met. I like you. And so we start chatting, and he starts seeing me once a week and lifting me up, and he keeps inviting me to this center of his, which is kind of like a church, and I'm Jewish, and I keep telling him, no, I don't go to church. Well, after about 6 months of him working with me, he says, I've been supporting you for 6 months. I need your support now. I need you to show up on Sunday. So I did. And I listened to Dr. Barbara Waterhouse talk about the power within me, the God within me, that there wasn't some God out there, it's in here. And it blew my mind and my heart. And it opened in a whole new way I'd never felt before. And I just wanted more. I just wanted more of this. And so I kept going to the center. And then after a couple of years, the music director quit. And they called me into their office and they said, hey, we know your history. We'd like you to take over as music director here. Now, when I left the music business, there was a lot of pain and heartache attached to that. So I wasn't really, even though I'd been in the teaching a couple of years, I got to tell you, I really wasn't sure I was up for that. So they reminded me that when you open to spirit, when you open to what's possible, you got to say yes to receive that good. So I gave it a shot. Started being the music director there. All these incredible musicians start showing up and playing with me. And we had this incredible band. And I start writing these songs, not because they just came through. They were downloading like crazy, these songs. And so I start playing them every Sunday, these songs that are downloading. And then after about a year, after service one day, after the celebration, a bunch of the congregants walk up to me with a wad of cash like this and go, we love your songs. We want you to record them. What a different experience. Opening to spirit, opening to this power, to this possibility, to this presence. All of a sudden, I'm not pushing anymore. It's like this evolution, right? Because that's what happens. We can have an evolution with who we have come here to be. The big insight, the big revelation that hit me just this morning was that you can be on track. You can be doing exactly the thing you came here to do and still not be allowing spirit to work with you in it. Be pushing in that by me place that had never dawned on me before, that you could actually be in alignment and yet not let spirit in. And when that hit me this morning, it was like overwhelming to feel that place of how I did that to me, not letting spirit in, just because I was so sure that music was the thing and I could do it. But none of us have to do any of this alone. We can. You know, the beauty about free will is you can be as alone as you want. And I must have done that. I could see that I did that. That all my self-talk was that I'm in this alone. I'm in this doing this. I'm the one pushing. I'm the only one I can count on. And by doing that, I destroyed myself. But the beauty of life is we get to be reborn. We get to rise from the ashes and go again. That is the beauty of what we have here, that we can do together. So I made that CD, and it not only got sold in my center, but wound up going out to other centers. It was called Walk Across Fire. It had 10 songs on it. And all of a sudden I start getting calls from other centers saying, hey, will you come play here? And so I decide, okay, I'm just going to say yes. I'm going to follow this. I'm going to be with this. I'm going to allow it to unfold. And so I go on the road and I start traveling around, and I'm playing in all these different centers and unity churches all around the US, you know, having a ball at it, really having a good time. And then one day a minister says to me, you know, if you do the music and the talk, we can pay you more. I was like, oh, well, I like to talk. I could do that. Evolution. Moving us closer and further, you know, along the path to being who we have come here to be. Evolution, when we allow ourselves to be in that as me and through me space. Evolution, doing it all by itself without me having to struggle and push and you know, all those things that I'm sure all of you have gone through. Am I the only one who's pushed and been exhausted? Am I it? So you know what that feels like to go after something like that. Well, this time I didn't. And so I start doing the talk. And then the next evolution, I show up at my mom's as I'm passing through Kentucky one day, and my very, very Jewish mother goes, you should become a minister. I'm like, oh, wow. Never in my life did I think those words would ever come out of my mother's mouth. And so I went back and saw John and Barbara, and I said, what about me becoming a minister? And they were like, that's a great idea. You'd be great at it. So I signed up for ministerial school. Now, I didn't have the money to pay for it. And I had no clue how it was going to get paid for. So here I am, signed up for ministerial school because this was mine to do. It was clearly mine to do. And I was at a point where I was just saying yes, and just allowing all, you know, any and all possibilities to come into my life. This is where I was. This is what I wanted to happen. And out of nowhere shows up a check from a relative I had not spoken to in 15 years that paid for all 3 years of ministerial school. It was astounding. It was just astounding. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that, you know, here I am in this teaching, and I couldn't believe it. I'm still like, oh my God, this is a miracle. Paid for everything. And the funniest part was it was just enough to pay for anything. It wasn't like there was anything left. It was like, that's what it paid for. So I got through ministerial school. And in my last year of ministerial school, I had a dream. A dream of an online center that acted and behaved as if it was a brick and mortar. Now, when I graduated, when I was in ministerial school, nobody had ever heard of that kind of thing. Nobody had done anything like that. Nobody. So when I called home office and said, hey, I have this idea for this online center, they had no clue what I was talking about. Now, because of the space and the teaching and everything I had gone through here, I knew not to push this. I knew not to exhaust myself making it happen, that I could count on something greater than myself if this was truly mine to do. And I knew that it was. And so sure enough, other ministers started showing up saying, we want to support you in doing this. We think this is the future. This is a great idea. We're going to let home office know they need to let you do this. And 6 months before I graduated, we held our first service online in a room called Zoom that nobody had ever heard of back then. I was the guy who introduced the entire movement to Zoom. And so all of a sudden things are like opening up, and at the height of that first couple of years, we ran that for 3 years. We had viewings of up to 2,500 people a week from around the world in over 100 countries. It was astounding. But that's what's possible when you really open and say yes and move forward in ways that you don't know how, but you're not going to push and make it happen either. It's not our job to make our lives unfold. There's something greater going on here. Now, am I saying there was no work involved? We shouldn't work? I practice my guitar almost every day. I still. You know, when we were doing the center, I was busy all the time, but didn't exhaust me. And I wanted you to know that that's how you know the difference. That if what you're doing is exhausting, you're pushing. You're not using this power that Ernest Holmes talks about as this power for good, and you can use it. You're not being with the possibilities of how something can unfold. Now, I had no idea that how my life was going to evolve. About a decade ago, Ash and I decided we were no longer going to treat for specifics, but instead treat for full flourishing life. And in that change, allowed for possibilities that we never could have expected. Now, here I am in this, right? Really deep in this, and I meet Ash online and wind up moving to California to be with her, and got the job at Burbank, California as the senior minister there of the brick and mortar. And I'm in this teaching fully, and yet when I walk through those doors, I have to tell you that all of a sudden I went back to my old habits of pushing. Because that happens, right? We get clear, things start happening, we feel in synchronicity, the synchronicity stops, we start freaking out, and so we start pushing. Am I the only one? And so that happened there, and what happened was, because I did that, the attendance went down. And the more it went down, the more I pushed. Because I was like, I got to make this happen. And luckily, I have an incredibly brilliant wife who goes, we just need to treat for full flourishing life. We need to remember that this is what this is about and allow it to unfold the way it does. It was scary. Sometimes it can be very scary to let go. You know, that saying, let go, let God. My only problem with that saying is it makes it sound like the God's out there someplace instead of right here. That we have this higher power within us to put to use. Now, one of the more interesting parts is I hated living in LA. I was only doing it for Ash. So when the time came that our kids grew up and they were old enough and going to college and moving on, that happened at the exact moment that COVID hit. A synchronicity around that, where a lot of people I know struggled and suffered during COVID. I have to tell you that for us, it was fantastic. We got to stay home. We got to be with ourselves, be with each other. We got to reinvent our lives and come from a place of spirit and know that there's something more for us. And I got the call about Asheville, North Carolina. We arrive in Asheville, and John and Barbara, when we went and had dinner with them, not only invited me to speak at the center, they also said, our music director just quit. How'd you like to be the music director here again? And so all of a sudden, I got to play music again. And the beauty of it this time was I really took with me everything I had learned about not getting in my own way. And so the thing unfolded incredibly, beautifully, and easily. It was so easy. That was the most fun part about it, was just how easy it was to do this incredible music in Asheville week after week after week. We just, the band showed up, we had a great band, and we were just banging out this music. And I started writing new songs again. And so it's not like you just get one shot at whatever it is you're after in life. And it isn't as if that one shot's then over, because another one's coming. If it's yours to do, it's going to keep showing up, that urging and everything. And so I'm writing new songs, and we're playing these songs and doing all this. And the healing of all that was extraordinary, because I had left Burbank exhausted because I'd pushed so hard. And it came to the point where I was saying, I think I could be a senior minister again. I think I'm ready now. But I need to do it different this time. I need to not push. I need to be real. I need to show up authentically. And then find that center that wants what I have just the way I do it. And so I have this discussion with Ash, and she's like, great, wherever it is, that's where it is. So we didn't say it had to be here. We didn't actually put any limits on it at all, just the quality of life that we wanted. And it had to include my ability to keep playing music, because music is a deep part of my life. And that's where you guys come in. We found each other. It's like this beautiful thing of just finding each other and feeling at home. This has been an incredible journey for me. I mean, just extraordinary. And I wanted to share it because I want you to know that that's what's possible for anybody when you're willing to stop pushing, start opening, start knowing that anything is possible, and let those new possibilities show up in the ways that they will, which may be very different from what you had in mind. This is very different from what I had in mind when, 40 years ago or whatever it was. This is very different. And yet this is fantastic. I was having dinner with Murray and Sandra last night, and Murray was saying how he feels like he hit the jackpot. Well, I feel like I hit the jackpot being here with you. I want each of you to hit the jackpot. I want you to have that for yourself, for your life. It's possible. I am here to hold that for each and every one of you, the possibility of the brilliance you get to have in your life. The possibility at wherever you are to bring out still what is yet to come from the powerful, creative, spiritual, unique being that you are, that you are, that you are, that each of us is here. I want to thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to come share with you guys like this. I love you all so much, and I look forward to getting to know each of you individually. Anybody who wants a coffee date with me, I am happy to do that. I love coffee dates. So just come up and say, you want a coffee date? We got a coffee date going on. I love you. Know that whatever is in your heart has a place in this world. Know that for yourself the way I know it for you. Thank you. I love you.